Ugqirha Imtiaz Suleiman wombutho iGift of Givers uzive evuya ile meko.
We are extremely grateful to the Department of Foreign Affairs, and we are extremely happy because people who need it most will finally get what is life-saving equipment and medicines.
Usekela mphathiso wezangaphandle uMnumzana Aziz Pahad uthe nangona kukho ubunzima ukufumana isisombululo esisiso solungquzulwano lePalestina noSirayeli, kodwa uMzantsi Afrika uzimisele ukuzama ngako konke onakho ukukhuthaza umoya wobudlelwane obuhle phakathi kwezizwe zombindi mpuma ezingquzulanayo.
A team of UN arms inspectors arrived in Iraq yesterday to relaunch a search for weapons of mass destruction. With the arrival of the inspectors in Baghdad, Iraqis hope another war can be averted. Now our reporter Renee Horn has been in Iraq. She reports on the devastating impact the 1991 Gulf War has had on that country's infrastructure. Let's take a look at this.
Fishermen trying to make a living. Once they could peddle their trade here, now no more. Passing ships used to buy their fish, now they are out of business.
This is the aftermath of war. Before 1991, this harbour was one of the busiest in Iraq. Now ships are slowly sinking due to exports being prohibited as a result of the sanctions.
But it's not only this harbour that's been affected. Since 1991, Iraqis have been living under economic sanctions. Children are dying daily due to lack of medical supplies. Yet despite their hardships, many Iraqis are patriotic to their country and blame the United States instead.
My daughter is affected by the bombs which had depleted uranium. She's deformed. I lost my other son. I'm scared to get pregnant again.
United Nations says their All for Food program, implemented in 1996, has gone some way towards helping the Iraqi people. But this program is facing a financial crisis. Iraq gives its all for food and basic necessities like medical supplies. There's been a drop in revenues from Iraq's oil exports and fluctuating oil prices. The financial crisis has meant fewer medical supplies are available for children in need. Many of them have to go without anesthetic.
This program, which has received billions of dollars, still needs more time to complete their work. Because it's not possible. As I said, you have more than 10 years of accumulated problems in all sectors.
South African non-governmental organizations are trying to assist.
In Basra, we're looking at two systems. One is bringing medical equipment for the hospitals, as they've been the most affected, and also bringing additional cash in partnership with CARE to support the integrated medical health systems.
More than 11 years after sanctions were first imposed, ordinary Iraqis still hope for a better way of life. They're waiting to see whether the visit by the weapons inspectors will change their fortunes for better or worse. Renee Horn, SABC, Basra.
High spirits and eating well was the name of the game at a rather lofty lunch in Cape Town today. Not only was the venue way up high, but so too were the principles behind it. Aisha Ismail and cameraman Hubert Slingers explain.
As the more than 600 guests dined on food prepared by some of the country's top chefs, they were entertained by South Africa's top divas. The artists, who are all part of an independent goodwill organization, reminded the diners of the thousands of people who go hungry every day. Guests sat around one of the world's longest tables to break one of the longest loaves of bread for peace, hope and unity.
To me, it is a microcosm of peace in the world. In South Africa, if we of different cultures, different races, different religious groups can get together for such a noble purpose, surely we can set an example for the Middle East and for the rest of the world.
It's going to happen. There are little hiccups on the way, but there's no question that we're coming to an age where everything's coming together.
Sadly, after the lunch, piles of leftover food, some completely untouched, were dumped into refuse bins.
Hundreds of people have attended this year's event, and all proceeds will be donated to Red Cross Children's Hospital. It's the only specialized children's hospital in Africa.
And to celebrate the symbolism of the Table of Unity, pensioners from various old age homes were treated to a banquet in the city. Aisha Ismail, E-News, Cape Town.
Meanwhile, a South African organisation is preparing to send aid to Goma. The Pietermaritzburg-based gift of theGivers Foundation has helped millions of disaster victims around the world in the past decade. It has previously sent aid to Rwanda and Mozambique, and now it wants to help the DRC's volcano victims. Akash Bramdio has more.
It's an area that's been ravaged for the past few decades by war, now by a natural disaster. The result is that those who previously had little now have nothing. 300,000 people who fled the lava are destitute. As with other disasters in Africa, Western aid agencies were again slow off the mark. The South African relief agency is now rushing to provide victims with food, medicines and water purification tablets. With the help of the Department of Foreign Affairs, they're hoping to have the first consignment in the DRC by the weekend.
Goma is Africa. We are all Africans. It is only imperative and proper that we help our neighbors. And to see those kids without any food is unacceptable. It's a little effort and a lot of people can benefit.
The foundation has used R250,000 from its emergency funds to purchase the supplies. It's now appealing for further funds to purchase food, tents and blankets.
We have a saying, best among people are those who benefit mankind. And indeed, it is the greatest joy to benefit those in need. And when you see the light on the people's faces, there's no price tag to that.
The United Nations estimates that R180 million of aid is required. For now, the main priority is getting that aid to the affected area and getting it there quickly. Akash Bramdio, E-News, Durban.
A South African humanitarian organization is collecting money for Afghani refugees in Pakistan. It has already raised more than R2 million and aims to get at least R1 million more. This report from Mbali Tusi.
Founded 10 years ago by Dr. Imitiaz Suleiman, the Gift of theGivers Foundation has been a beacon of hope for millions of people around the world. Giving humanitarian aid in the form of food and clothing to those less fortunate has been the primary objective of the organization. Some of its aid projects have been to help the victims of the devastating earthquake in India and the floods in Mozambique. With winter fast approaching, the situation for Afghanistan refugees is becoming desperate.
The money will be sent in batches, not all at once, in batches, to different suppliers from whom we are purchasing food, blankets, medicines, clothing, baby food and blankets and tents. And as they send this goods to our people on the ground, and once the first parcel is delivered, then we pay for a second parcel. In that way we can monitor effectively and make sure that money is not wasted.
Within 10 days, more than R2 million has already been raised from donations around the country, mostly from Muslims. The South African Reserve Bank had granted the organization permission to send the money to humanitarian organizations in Pakistan. Mbali Tusi, E-News, Pietermaritzburg.
There are fears that a cyclone looming in the Indian Ocean could worsen the heavy rains in Mozambique. The UN World Food Programme believes the cyclone could strike by the weekend, but the South African Weather Bureau predicts it will peter out before then. The South African National Defence Force is taking no chances, as Donald Chauke reports from Mozambique.
More areas in Mozambique are being hit by floods. Heavy rains continued falling last night in some areas. This is why the South African National Defence Force is now doing search and rescue. Initially, they were here in Mozambique just to do food drops. These medics here to make sure everybody is airlifted to safety. There's no time to pack up all their belongings. Not even pets could escape the impact of the heavy rains, crying out for their owners in the middle of a flood zone. The flood victims are airlifted to a higher ground in Tambara. Local flood relief officials say more people are streaming to places of safety.
Sim, a princípio não queriam vir, não é? Mas
we are being inundated with homeless people, but we're doing our best to accommodate them.
Já estão a encontrar-se numa situação de muito risco e já estão a querer serem evacuados.
On the other side of Beira, the Mozambican army doing food drops. It is believed 4 people were killed yesterday in Buzi, near Pungwe River. But Mozambicans are beginning to realize the seriousness of the floods. They are escaping lower-lying areas. Driving in some parts of Mozambique could be risky. Donald Chauke, E-News, Beira, Mozambique.
And South Africans are shipping more relief supplies to flood victims in Mozambique. During last year's floods, millions of rands in food, medicines and clothing were donated. Now South Africans are opening their hearts once again. Akash Bramdia reports.
Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman gave up a successful medical practice to assist those suffering around the world. In the last 10 years, his organization has donated more than 32 million rand in aid. In addition to local disadvantaged communities, the beneficiaries include those affected by the war in Bosnia, as well as earthquakes in Iran, Turkey, and more recently India. Now Suleiman has turned his focus to Mozambique.
People, especially children, are dying in Mozambique. We believe that best among people are those who benefit mankind. It enhances your spirituality when you benefit other people.
With the help of ordinary South Africans, 100 tons of emergency supplies have been bought. This includes food, oil, candles, blankets and tents. 30,000 water purification tablets have already been sent to flood-ravaged areas. Today, packing began in earnest to ensure the aid reaches Mozambique as soon as possible. During last year's floods, Suleiman's organization set up a R1 million relief program. He has now set up his own distribution network in Mozambique to ensure the aid reaches those who need it most. The emergency supplies will leave South Africa tomorrow by ship. They're expected to arrive in Mozambique by the end of this week. For those starving, the shipment will be a godsend. Akash Bramdio, E-News, Pietermaritzburg.
Coming to you live at 7, this is E-News. Good evening and thank you for joining us. More than 20,000 people have now died in the Iranian earthquake. The quake struck yesterday and destroyed much of the city of Bam. International rescue teams are helping search for survivors. We'd like to warn you that the following visuals may disturb some viewers.
Thousands of earthquake survivors spent a freezing night huddled under woolen blankets. Pavements were crowded with the injured. The pre-dawn earthquake injured about 30,000 people, but those hospitals still standing could not accommodate another victim. The International Red Crescent has flown many